On any given day, a human being has, on average, between 50 to 60,000 thoughts. Now, most of these are just repeat appearances from the past. And we're wired to really create this automation so we can be more efficient, because the brain actually takes a lot of energy, close to 40% of the body's energy. And so it makes sense from a survival perspective that we need to create these programs that can run on autopilot. And it's useful when you don't have to learn to brush your teeth every single morning, or tie your shoelaces, or learn how to drive a car. So this level of habituation is actually quite convenient. It helps us, be more efficient. But the downside to this is that we spend most of our day, most of our week, most of our year, most of our life really in a state of unconsciousness. And what I mean by a state of unconsciousness is that we are not actively present for most of our life. We're not mindful of every activity, every second of experience, every now that we experience. And so what happens is that most people, they sleepwalk through life, and they get to a certain age and they start looking back with regret. So on this episode, I want to give you an experience of being coached by me. This is going to be a self-coaching episode. So I'm going to help you bring things from your unconscious to your conscious. I'm going to help you know yourself. I'm going to help you really introspect what's happening inside you, how you've been living your life, how you've been thinking about yourself. And when you bring what's in the unconscious to the conscious, you actually create a sense of choice. You actually create a sense of agency. You actually create the ability to do something different if you so choose. Carl Jung said, until we make the unconscious conscious, it'll drive our life and we will call it fate. Your life, your destiny, what you do for the rest of the time that you're here on earth, doesn't have to be fate. You can create it. And you can not just create your life, but you can create yourself. And you don't have to be who you were. You don't have to be what you were. You can decide, you can choose. So let's begin. The first question for you is, are you using your time wisely? Are you spending your time on the things that are important to you? Are you spending your time on the things you value? Now, all of these questions are pretty subjective. There's no objective answer to any of these questions. So for yourself, just allow the answer to come to you. The way to really play in this episode is just listen to the question as I share it, and then just allow the answer to come to you and let it just sit on your palate. And you may ask yourself, how much time do I waste just mindlessly zoning out, mindlessly tuning out? To what extent am I present in my life? Am I really present? Am I bringing my full awareness? Here's the next question. Are you taking anything or anyone for granted? Are there things in your life that you value, but you just take for granted? You don't appreciate. You don't feel actively the gratitude for those things, for those people. How often do you experience and convey appreciation for the different people and things in your life? Are you living true to yourself? Whatever your definition is, whatever your values are you living true to yourself? Are you being authentic? Or are you trying to live to someone else's expectations? How they think you need to be, how they think you ought to be? Do you speak your mind? Do you express yourself authentically? Is your work an expression of yourself? Are your relationships true to who you are? To what extent is your thinking negative? So, how much of your thinking is dominated by negative thoughts? Are these thoughts creating anxiety, stress, overwhelm, fear, doubt? You can almost think about this as the thought balance. How many of your thoughts are positive? And you don't need an exact number. You don't even need an exact percentage. But roughly, is your day dominated by negative thinking? Or is it just a small percentage? Are you letting things, people, circumstances that are out of your control stress you out? Are you thinking a lot about things that are out of your direct control? And is that creating stress in your body, stress in your mind? Are there things you've been carrying in your body mind for days, weeks, years? What worries you most about your future? What aspect of your past hounds you like a ghost? Is there some aspect of the past that you're still carrying that you'd like to release? If this was the last day of your life, would you have any regrets? Would you do the exact same things as you're planning on doing? Is there anyone you'd call and share how you feel about them? Is there anything that you would do? In other words, how would you live if you were actually short on time? What would you really do? What would you dare to do? What are you really scared of? What are you really scared of? What would you do if you didn't have this fear? If you weren't scared of this thing that you said a few seconds ago? What would you do? Are you holding on to something that you need to let go of? How long have you been holding on to it? 'Cause, 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 And if not now, then when would you like to let go of it? What's keeping you from letting go of it? What are the three things that matter to you most in your life? And what are you doing about those things? What in your life allows you to feel like you matter? Is there a deeper purpose or truth that emerges when you ask yourself that question? What dream have you given up on? And what caused you to give up on that dream? And how does that feel? When did you last push the boundaries of your comfort zone? When did you last stretch? When did you last lean into an edge for you? How will you live? How will you choose to live knowing that you will die? Knowing that we'll all die, that we're only here for a short stint and our life will just be a dash between two dates. What aspect of yourself do you struggle to accept? And in what way do you withhold love from yourself? In what ways do you punish yourself? Who has had the greatest impact on your life? Who's really impacted you? What do you want most from life? What is life asking of you? What is that intelligence, that infinite creative potential that's flowing through you, that's animating you? What is it trying to create through you? What is it trying to bring forth into form through you? What's the one thing that you'd like others to remember about you at the end of your life? How would you like to be remembered? Does it really matter what others think about you? If your body could talk, what would it say about the way you've treated it? If it could make one request of you, what would it ask for? If you could talk to any past version of yourself, is there a piece of advice that you'd give yourself? Would you really wish others knew about you? What do you say yes to that you'd really like to say no to? What would happen if you actually said no to those things or to those people? What are all the things that you'd like to say yes to that you might have said no to? What would happen if you allowed yourself to say yes to those things? What's one thing that you could stop doing that would dramatically change your life? What's one thing that you could start doing that would dramatically change your life? Now just notice what's happening in your body in this moment of deep contemplation, in this moment of reflection and introspection. Notice the awareness that's been expanded, that feels a little more spacious. Notice the stillness in your mind, or maybe the lack of stillness in your mind. Just notice what it's like to bring up all this material about this sense of self that you've identified yourself to be. Now, this sense of self is very useful. It's very, very practical, right? But notice that you are actually the space in which this sense of self exists, in which all these thoughts that you've just had about yourself exists. Notice that you're not any one of these individual thoughts. In fact, you are not any thought at all. And any emotions or feelings or sensations you might be feeling right now, you are not any of those things either. You're just the space in which those things arise. And as you allow yourself to contemplate with stillness the truth of who you are, notice that you may have become really present. And there is a quality of timelessness that you may experience. And with all this awareness and with all this presence, I'm going to ask you one final question. Who are you? Who are you? Just let that question sit. And for the rest of today, just let that question sit on your palate, not trying to actively answer it, but just gently reflecting on it. Who am I? Really, who am I? And in that stillness, you may receive some answers that'll surprise you. Thank you for joining me today, and feel free to give this episode a second listen and really follow along if my pauses were too short. I love you and happy contemplating.